Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading property experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, and Ben Kingsley, Chair of Property Investment Professionals of Australia and the 2014 and 2015 Property Investment Advisor of the Year.
All right, folks, you're on the Property Couch, where each week Ben and I bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management. Welcome back, mate. Before I welcome you, how's the plum shirt, mate? You're looking $1 million.
Well, you know,
what's going on?
maybe Jane went shopping. No, it's one of the shirts. It's actually one of the shirts.
Appeared on the real estate.
It has.
Are you impressed I know?
Yeah, well, because you thought, what the hell's that?
No, you got to check it out, folks. We'll take a photo of us.
Still got the croaky throat, though.
Let people see what old mate's got on today. He's looking vibrant.
You know why I did it?
Why?
Just to exaggerate the moustache.
Yeah, you've got a bit of Merv Hughes about you.
Yeah, well, I went big because to embarrass myself.
Yeah, you got a bit of lamb chop going on.
Yeah, there is a bit.
So we are, of course, talking about Movember.
We are.
We had we reached out last week.
I know. We're very lucky.
And we said,
Very
let's see if we can accelerate this fundraising.
Yes.
And let's just say our community are good people, because they dove in spades.
They did, and there's plenty of books going out the door, which is
Plenty of
even
books.
better.
So
Lots of knowledge being passed
we can
on.
thankfully say, Ben, that we have absolutely nailed our $5,000
Yes.
target. So
What do they get for that? They get the webinar.
they get the webinar.
Yep. So we're going to do a webinar.
You're going to do the webinar
Before Christmas.
Before Christmas.
Before Christmas.
Stay tuned. So you just I was choke
Before
on our water
Christmas.
over there. So it's
Yeah.
before Christmas.
But because I've also booked in to record the interest only versus principal and interest
Ooh.
piece as well.
Another one of those things you promised
them. I'm trying to fit them in the diary. They're finding their way in. So I'm going to sit down with Joel Burton, who's one of our guys in the team here, one of our qualified property investment advisors, and we're just going to go through and talk about the pros and cons.
Mate, that's very good for you to follow through on these.
I'm
That's what we love
trying
about
to
you.
find a way.
Now, Colin Lau, listener of ours, lives
Yes.
over in Perth. In fact, lives in the street in South Perth that my father grew up in,
okay.
with my grandfather.
Small world.
Now, he reached out to us.
Yeah.
Well, he actually sent me an email.
Yep.
And he goes, Bryce, this is what I'm doing. I want to support you guys with Movember.
Yep.
So what I want to do, I'm going to give Ben $100 for the Mo.
Yep.
I'm going to give you $100, Bryce. And here's the deal: there's another $100 on the table, right? And before I go into what the other $100 on the table was, there's actually a bit of groundswell for the same thing that Colin was referring to.
Oh, I saw that.
The troops.
Yeah, in Facebook.
So what Colin said is, I will give a third $100 donation if Stiggy over here opens the batting.
Iris.
Yeah, she opens the batting.
If she introduces
she does the intro.
podcast.
She does the intro. So that put a bit of panic into Ivis, let's be honest, because let's talk about the elephant in the room. There's a couple of elephants in the room we're going to talk about today, but one is that makes her really nervous, right?
Right.
Because she's good at a lot of stuff, but speaking in public, she doesn't like it.
No, behind the camera.
She likes
to be behind the scenes.
Yeah.
That's right.
But here's the deal, Ben. No one's walked up to us at a property expo and asked for a selfie with you or me, have they? But they have with Stiggy.
I know.
In Sydney. So, Ivis, can we have a selfie? So
now, can I also say, because I know we're going somewhere here, but I'm going to give you some really disturbing facts around men's health later in my Did You Know section.
Okay.
So even though we've reached our first target.
Well, yeah, good point. Because we're actually going to see if we can up the stakes.
Yes.
We're actually going to follow Colin's lead and a couple of others that are the groundswell of people on Facebook. If we get 7,500.
7,500.
Ivis will intro.
Wait, she's got,
but if we get 10,000, if we get 10,000, she'll do the intro and the outro, and maybe even a life hack. So we want to know.
We get the 10,000. She joins the cast.
Correct. So there you go, folks. Now, before people write in and send us a letter, we're going to acknowledge, yes, we're using manipulation here, and yes, we're using guilt for charity. Totally. So otherwise, we'd never get her to say yes. So don't write us in a letter. We understand. Our eyes are wide open. We are manipulating and using guilt here for Ivis for the benefit of charity.
Correct. So, all the money goes to charity. And I also saw just quickly there, because you showed me some of the Facebook stuff before we started today. Yeah. And there's a couple of people asking, are we all out of books?
No.
Like, the answer to that is no.
So, because we're the People's Podcast and the people want to hear from Ivis.
They do.
So, we're going to throw it out to our listeners. Thank you to those folks who've donated. We are going to send you the books. I've got a mountain of books, Ben, that I've got to put a signature on, so that's no problem. But if we reach the next 5,000, that's another 200 books we'll give out.
Oh, great.
So minimum $25.
And remember, we're picking up the postage.
We're picking up.
We're putting it in an express envelope, so
effectively
$1,000 worth of postage. We're happy to pay.
So effectively, what we're doing is we're matching people dollar for dollar here, Ben.
Pretty much.
So if you put your money where your mouth is, Ivis will get involved. We'll hit 10,000. We'll exceed all of our expectations, and later on we'll find out where it's going to go to, Ben. So
sounds like a plan. And is it right? Next week we have someone coming in from the foundation.
We do.
So that's terrific. So we've got a spokesperson coming in from the foundation to also give us some further insights in terms of where that money goes, which is really good.
So we're committed.
We are.
So the question to the listeners: are you committed? Let's get Ivis. Let's get Ivis out of the edit room, out of the behind the scenes, and get her involved. So
very good.
7.5 is our first milestone, and Ivis, Ben, yesterday she's like, sure. Let's she did it so flippantly that she thought there's no way we'd even get anywhere near those targets. So I'm going to throw in the first 500, Ben, just to kick it off.
Beautiful.
You threw in the first 500 on the first 5,000. I'm going to throw the first 500 on the second 5,000. Come on, folks, I need your help. Come on, let's do it, folks. Hey, my Mindset Minute theme today is a Jim Rohn classic. Ben, I must admit, Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, I would love to have actually met them. Would have been like awesome, but just
Correct.
to be in one of their seminars and listen to them speak would have been terrific. So
Agreed.
it's no secret that Jim Rohn appears a lot on my Mindset Minute team.
Yes.
But today, the few who do are the envy of the many who only watch. So I was thinking the other day. I went to. Do you remember the band Live?
Yeah, of course I do.
Band?
Yeah.
Went to their
Lightning Crashes.
Oh,
Yep.
what else?
That's about it.
There's
a couple of others.
I forgot how many
albums.
I forgot how many rippers they had.
One of their CDs.
So I remember sitting there and I was watching them, and they were just like, they smoked it, right?
Yeah.
And thinking, you know, how many people in the crowd? I don't know. I'm throwing a number. Sydney My Music Bowl to capacity.
Yeah.
What's that? Is that 5,000, 10,000?
7 to 10.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But there's only 5 or 6 on stage, right?
Yeah.
So there's the few who do it. So in that context, the envy of everyone in the crowd.
Agreed.
But think about cricket. There's 13 people. This would be good for you. You'd love cricket.
Starts today.
Yep. What? You know
Well, I turned the ABC News on this morning, and they said that
What
the
ground?
Ashes, Brisbane, always in Brisbane.
Well, this is,
Always starts in
yeah,
Brisbane.
okay.
Yep.
Well, you can have your passport back now. So there's 11 on the fielding side. There's 2 batting, and then obviously a couple of umpires. So there's not that many in. And if you think about Boxing Day when they get 100,000 people, mate. So the few who do.
And if you're going to
envy
Boxing Day,
of the
download a couple of
many who
podcasts
watch.
because it's pretty boring. So if you want to, get a little bit of knowledge whilst you're watching from afar.
Benjamin, seriously, how did that escape you?
Maybe we should put the podcast ad on the big screen.
You're as steak and 3 veggies as they come, mate. So how did the cricket thing miss?
I'm happy to play and participate, but it's just too slow for me.
Okay,
Just too slow.
That's all. So Q&A day. You ready for this?
Q&A day.
And there's a bit of a theme.
There is a theme today.
So Q&A day is all around exit strategy.
Exits. Right.
So we talked about some frameworks to build the portfolio. Let's talk about some frameworks around exiting. So
sounds good.
All right, here's the first one from Lou, Facebook message. Hi guys, long time listener. You take the edge off Sydney commuting. Thank you. My husband and I currently have 6 properties in New South Wales. Nothing in Sydney Metro yet. Valued at $2.3 million.
Very good. Well done. Congratulations.
And an LVR at 64% with a dollar sign at the front. So I'm not sure the dollar sign's meant to be there.
Almost neutrally geared right there.
And listen to this. And a gross yield of 8.2%.
Oh, goodness me. Sorry, apologies. Cash flow
You went
positive.
early. You went early.
Cash flow positive.
That's cash flow positive. We're both 40-ish with 2 kids under 5. Wow, they're busy. Our aim is to retire early with $100,000 income. Reading your book, watching the videos and listening to the podcast, I am wondering if retirement income is always based on rental income alone, or do you ever recommend borrowing off the equity as part of an early retirement strategy? With major buffers, of course. We've been very wrapped up in the acquisition phase that it's hard to see where the end is, especially when rents seem to creep up so slowly. I would love your thoughts on living off equity as part of the strategy. Thanks, Lou.
Thanks, Lou. So there's a bit going on there. The one thing I don't have is the income story, and I don't have the super story. So one of the big things that we always talk about when it is your overall passive income, we don't disseminate or dissect into what it's coming off the property versus what's the overall wealth story. So you might have some shares mixed in with that, definitely some super, unless maybe you're self-employed and you haven't been paying yourself super, which you should, because it's a very, very effective way to invest. The reality is this. So we always talk about getting the money in your offsets to continue to keep filling the buckets. So technically your interest is lower, and at some point in time you could either retire the debt or you could have all this equity built up, all this liquidity. So it's not that traditional borrowing and living off the equity, because obviously when you do that there's interest on interest, and that's not necessarily what I would consider a successful way of doing that. Because the other thing that we don't know from Lou is how much money do they want early versus how much money do they want late. So as an example, if you're 95, how much are you going to spend of that money? You're going to still be, traveling the world? Are you still going to be jumping out of perfectly good aircraft? So you're going to be doing all this adventure stuff? Or no, you're sort of, going to be teetotaling and just sitting back and relaxing and watching the world go by and spending less? So a lot of people might want a little bit more earlier on, and that's where the idea of having that liquidity piece is important. Or if they want to basically have that money indefinitely and pass it on to the next generation, then the reality is going to be that they can do that. But it all comes down to looking at those overall numbers. On the whole, I'm not a big fan of living off equity. I'm more of a fan of retiring the debt and obviously doing an exit strategy where you might sell one down and time that exit out. But it would come down to modelling the numbers, modelling the growth story, because with an 8.2% overall gross rental yield, I'd be fascinated to have a look at what those properties are like and whether they're getting lots of growth. But if I'm already at 64, I'd be paying those down, and there may be one more in me in terms of a growth asset. So if I was, looking at their portfolio, I'd probably say, get me a growth asset in there. And then by doing that, effectively, I would sub out maybe one or two of those more, even though they're giving really strong cash flows, I might sub out one or two of those higher yielding properties that are giving me no growth in retirement. So I'd exit out of those over a period of time.
Mate, I like the cut of your jib. The point here is, they're relying on increase in rental alone. The important thing is if you're effectively channeling the money back to retiring debt, you're still increasing the rental pool through debt reduction. So that's one thing. And two, it's about, for me, this question, because I must admit my early strategy was the harvesting equity part of it. Yep. Thanks to you, that meeting you many, many years ago, that's swung around. But the question is, are you active or are you passive? So we would be considered active. We would be considered more likely to acquire more properties than the average person, because statistically we know that not many people will buy one, and then of those who do, they stop 73% at one. Because Chris Gray, for example, he does that. And he's got heaps of properties, right? So he is a more active investor than someone who is more passive. Correct. So therefore, he's got eternal confidence in the fact that he's got this portfolio in these suburbs of Sydney, and it will continue to grow over time. Because it's as you know,
and he's value adding. He's
turning apples
developed,
into apple pie.
And he's doing sort of penthouses on top of blocks of apartments and all that type of stuff. So he's a lot more sophisticated.
So that's where people have got to work out on the scale and where they are, because
he's solving bigger problems, taking on greater risk for better rewards.
And it's a white knuckle ride, because it relies on properties always growing. And what about the fact that in the next few years we might be in a lower growth environment? And if you're racking up debt at $100,000 a year, but you're in a low growth environment, that might leave you with some anxiety around what your retirement looks like. So
if you've got a $10 million property portfolio, risking two of it, well, okay, that's okay, isn't it?
But we see a lot of portfolios in this business, and not a lot of people are there.
No.
So put a ring around if you see yourself as an active or a passive investor. Because if you're passive, well, then it's more likely to give you less sleepless nights to do a debt retirement strategy and live off the passive income. If you're active and you just get your kicks out of property and you see yourself putting on tool belts and renovating, well, maybe living off equity might be for you.
And for these guys, it sounds like they've gone regional. To get those types of yield, it's unlikely you'll find them in any major metropolitan area. You might have one in Darwin or something along those lines. But so the reality is, if you've perfected what you're doing and it's working for you, and you're not having the tenant challenges with bad tenants in some of those locations, because I'd love to know some of the stories around each of the properties and what's happened and the good tenants and the bad tenants, because that's usually what you get. You don't never get a perfect run in terms of good tenants when you're sort of looking at those types of yields in some of the regional areas. But the reality is if you're up for it and you've perfected what you're doing, you can keep replicating. The real question is once you then forecast those cash flows, you'll know when you need to stop, as opposed to, if you want to keep going. Because property has a high in and out cost, doesn't it? It has a high recycle cost. So, cost to get in, cost to get out. So it's important that you don't just keep chasing them down when retiring the debt and living off the passive income could be the go.
One of the more profound statements I heard you say very early on when we first met, Ben, was, you said, this is my goal. This is my passive income goal. I don't need many more properties before my portfolio is done. Job is done. Speak to Jane Slack-Smith. Job is done. She's not acquiring anymore. And that was counterintuitive at the time, because you can have this sense that you just got to keep buying. Got to keep buying. Got to keep buying. Got to have 20, 30, 40, and he who dies with the most property wins. But the reality is, if you've got a clearly defined endpoint and you reverse engineer what that endpoint looks like, it takes away all the mystery. And it gives you actually a step-by-step approach of what you actually need to do. So the fact that you can put the queue in the rack and then over time have no pressure to keep up with the Joneses, no pressure to keep up with the person who wants to be on the front page who's got 10 or 12, because you are actually progressively walking towards your goal with 3 or 4 or 5 properties.
Yeah, and so it's never about the number. It's about the income that it gives. And so if I was to go back and think about what I was thinking around in 2005, it was around that 140, 150 mark. Once we were able to sort of develop the simulator and the cash flows and all of that type of thing, I've tweaked it a little bit. It's gone up to 160. But it's been at that 160 now for probably 5 years. And now I know what I need to do. So I've got one more acquisition to make and then basically retire the debt out and I'm done. So...
Very good. So there you go, Lou. I guess the last point on that is the rule of 25, Ben. If you know how much income you want, multiply it by 25 and it gives you the amount of income producing assets debt-free you need. So for example, if you can live your life off $10,000 multiplied by 25, you need $250,000 worth of income producing assets outside of your family home. But if you need to do that by 100, $2.5 million. So you work out your number and then reverse engineer it.
And so the beautiful part about that is that's working off a 4% yield. So people will understand that. It's obviously 425s or 100. That's how it works. If you're chasing a higher yield, like a 5% yield, then it's the rule of 20. So it's as simple as that. But we call it the rule of 25 purely to base on, if we're in this historically low interest rate environment, then it's better to be conservative, and it's better to sort of say yield and rental yields might sit around 4% for a longer period, which means capital growth is still going to be pretty strong. So it's always a good point to make.
Hey, good question, Lou. I think it's on everyone's mind, Ben, as they're building a portfolio. What does Make's strategy look like? So hopefully that's been helpful to the folks.
I got one here from Chris. Now, I'm not going to mention your surname, Chris, because you talk about how much money you've got in your offset account. So you know who you are. Hi, I've just started listening to your podcast, although this is back from January. So you've obviously listened a little bit longer than that. But thanks, Chris. We get a lot of questions.
Thanks for time saving that.
Yeah, so we do get a lot of questions. We like to get to them as many as we can. Can I get some advice from you guys regarding this case? In mid-2016, I paid $40,000 down payment, 10% for an off-the-plan one-bedroom apartment in Melbourne CBD, close to Melbourne Central. The settlement is in 2018. After getting some education from several property investment sources, including your podcast, which I should have done first, I realised that I'd probably made a rookie mistake. The purpose of this investment was for tax deduction.
No.
Another rookie mistake, I know. Now, I still have some cash, around $200,000 in my family home offset account, savings and equity for a remortgage. If I want to start building a long-term portfolio, I'm 37, 2 young kids, what should I do next? What's my next step? Should I suggest selling off the plan apartment before settlement? I have a very bad feeling about this investment. Looking forward to your advice. Now, we wish we had got to you a little bit earlier, but we've still got some advice for you,
We have
Chris.
still got some advice. Now, Ben, you didn't talk about the surname, but just for the benefit of the listeners, it's an Asian surname.
Yep.
And the reason I bring that up is because I see this scenario a lot for the Asian community.
Yeah, it's a good point.
I caught up with someone, you and I introduced you to him. I had a good chat with him this week, and he was talking about, in fact, he's a listener of the podcast.
Yep.
And he was talking about the fact that he deals in project marketing and for people internationally, overseas buying here. And one of the things that he mentioned was, there's a couple of things. One, if they're flying over to Thailand or Malaysia or Singapore and saying, hey, look, you should buy a property in Yarraville or Neutral Bay or Bulimba, that actually makes them nervous because they only know the CBD and they're imposing their own local view of high density living in Asia into Australia, whereas we value space. When we have a public holiday, we get in the car and we bust out to the country, we bust out to the beach, we want the open space. So culturally, it's normal for Asians to consider buying that high density stuff. So even though he said he's made a mistake, it's not unusual for what we see.
It's a generalised statement, but it's factually correct that the density piece and the comfort is normal. So they know norm and they understand their norms and they replicate their norms in a country that doesn't have consistent norms. Now, Sydney, a little bit different. You know, we've talked about this before in terms of Sydney. Since 1990, basically there have been more apartments built since 1990, you know, compared to Melbourne, 2012, okay, and Brisbane now, 2013. So we are a generation behind in terms of accepting apartment living. Now, I went to a dinner last night with CoreLogic. I caught up with Tim Lawless from CoreLogic and also Greville Paps from WPB Property, and we were having that chat around the Melbourne apartment market. And even Location Score, a lot of the data in some of those marketplaces around that city fringe, not the city, but the city fringe areas, the actual data's looking pretty good at the moment. So we're all sort of had this sort of view that some of these apartments, we might see some capital growth because it has underperformed the broader Melbourne house market at the moment. So this is what we've been talking about. Once house prices go to a point, do people keep moving wider and wider and wider? Or do they compromise? We talk about the buyer's decision quadrant. Do they compromise on size and go to townhouse? Yes, they do. And if they can't get the townhouse, do they do the apartment? And I think we're seeing that because they don't want to substitute lifestyle.
No, because the lifestyle's fantastic in the hub of Melbourne.
Yes.
So, you know, with all of the restaurants and cafes and everything that's on offer. So the other interesting part about the discussion we had with him was that the Asian buyer puts in a large deposit. So because of the lending, 30 to 40%. So therefore, when they get interest-only loan, it's cash flow neutral. So they're actually not interested. They're not driven by capital growth.
No.
They're actually driven by the fact that it's neutral cash flow. And over time, they're parking money in Australia and the debt will be paid off. So important backdrop for me in terms of this question. So, but there's so much we don't know. Should we sell it? I don't know.
Yeah.
But the next step is to create a plan. To create a well-formulated plan on actually where are we going, and let's reverse engineer, because the recycle costs of getting in and out of property, we've talked about that a couple of times. Agents' fees, if you've got capital gains tax, you might lose a deposit. If you've got stamp duty and you sell for a loss, and then you've got to buy the next one, stamp duty in, all those sorts of things. And based on what you said, Ben, there are some properties that will do okay.
Yeah.
But for me, number one, we've got to work out what the plan is. What are we shooting for? What's your end game? And then see if this forms part of it.
Correct. And I'd round that out, Chris, by saying if it is investment stock, in other words, if it's an apartment development that doesn't have real great unique features and you know, like I was talking again with Tim and he was saying some particular developers in Brisbane are developing these fantastic products in that sort of medium and high density space. So, you know, rooftop gardens and actually rooftop bars and all these different things which have a lot of lifestyle appeal to them. And you know, also the developer holds all of the real estate down on the ground level. So the commercial real estate they hold because they hand-pick the restaurants and the coffee shops and all of that so they can control the experience inside the building. Little things like that are important if you're going to look for those one-offs, those boutique apartment developments. So the first thing we'd be saying to Chris is, if it's not that, and it's just straight up, straight down, doesn't have curved windows or anything that's spectacular about it, doesn't have uninterrupted views.
Fishbowl.
Yeah. my first tip to Chris is absolutely ring the agents and see if you can get it. You know, what's the interest? I'd be happy to sell it if someone would pay for what I paid for it. I would absolutely look at that. If it's like, no, it's got this uniqueness. It's, you know, it connects into Melbourne Central, whatever it may look like, and it's all going to go ahead. If it's not that, then yeah, this one's been probably one you want to recycle.
Very good. Thank you for that. We appreciate your question. Sonia's got another one here, Ben. I've just started listening to you guys, and yes, I tune out about the football banter. We've been pretty good lately, haven't we?
Yeah, well, it's trade week.
Yeah.
It's draft trade, isn't it?
Well, Fremantle's got pick 2 and
I
pick
know.
5. So, yeah. So
I you just tuned out with that one.
She did tune out, but at least Fremantle's got to win something this year, don't they? Just 2 picks inside the top 10. I bought your book. My question is, what determines if an investment property is a dud? And should you get out of it as soon as these signs start to appear? So it's a flow-on question from our previous one.
Yep.
We bought an investment property in Thornbury, Melbourne. Now,
okay.
I'd say Thornbury, Melbourne is an investment-grade suburb.
It is an investment-grade suburb.
The area has had great growth in the last 5 years, agreed. Average above 8%, which is very good doubling cycle. Our property is a 2-bedroom townhouse circa 1970s. So far, pretty good. It has grown at about 4% per annum, and rent has not increased in the 5 years we have had it. That seems strange, doesn't it?
It does seem unusual. What date stamps on that?
Wow, we'll try not to date stamp
So-
too much. But,
okay.
Sometime this year,
I reckon she'd be
like
happier.
January.
She'd be happier
Yeah.
since that date stamp. Yep.
I've lost my spot, mate.
Sorry.
Rental yield is about 4%. All right, that's pretty good.
You're okay.
I believe the location is the problem, as it's not a walk to the main hipster drag. Hey, do you fit in the hipster spots now with that moustache?
Well, I don't have the short back and side. I need to cut the hair. But
Yeah,
then, no.
get a number 1 on the sides.
Yeah, exactly.
And then bust out that.
And I need to drink coffee, but I don't do that.
Yeah, well. We have cash flow to purchase another property, but could have more if we sell this possible dud. If we have a capital gains loss from a piece of land we sold a while ago, which we use to offset any capital gain we make if we sell the dud.
Okay, that's interesting. Yep.
Does this have the signs of a property dud? I'll say that obviously because there's exclamation marks and there's little rabbit's ears around dud.
It's a dud.
So they clearly feel it's a dud. Do we hold out and wait, or do we exit now? Use the capital loss to our benefit and buy another property.
Okay. So the first questions I've got around that is how many townhouses are there of that similar nature?
Yep.
So you can still, Kensington Mews is a perfect example in Melbourne where they just build a lot of the same stuff.
Lego land.
A bit of a Lego land down there and a lot of the same sort of townhouses, and then, so townhouses in one bit, and then the next layer up is the apartments, and then there's another, so it goes 3 stories and 5 stories and 8 stories. So you've just got to be mindful of that in terms of what it looks like. But if it's one of 2 or one of 3, I suspect right now they're enjoying excellent capital growth.
Agreed. Because circa 1970s sort of conjures up images of under 10 and probably under 5.
Oh, if it's a townhouse, it's probably hopefully one of 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't
it's
what we read
unusual.
on paper doesn't make sense.
No,
Anyway,
who is it? It's Sonia.
it's Sonia.
Sonia, reach out to us. I'm fascinated by that one. Can you send me an email? I'll see if I can, I'll get an updated story.
Info at the Property Couch, Sonia. Maybe we'll just pause that, see if we can get a link to the property and have a bit of a look.
do a bit of a look, because it doesn't.
It doesn't sound like a dud.
Now, but I really like her point around the walk distance to the social.
The hipster score.
Yeah, if it is a 15 or 20 minute walk, so if you are in the back pockets of a suburb, it can make a difference.
Yeah.
It absolutely can make a difference. So the closer you are to those lifestyle locations, the better you are. So, the better you're served by that. Now, that being said, obviously we do know that, yes, sort of Thornbury and that whole area has done pretty well. We're now seeing what's the other suburb next to Thornbury? Northcote, and obviously Northcote's a blue chip location
Preston
now.
to the north.
Preston up north. So yeah, it's unusual. So that's an interesting one.
All I'm trying to think of is there's some industrial stuff at the top of Fairfield and Northcote, and if it's
and there's a bit of Coburg.
Yeah.
So look, interesting.
Let us know. Let us see. But I guess to answer your question, it doesn't sound like a dud.
No.
from what you've described,
other than the 4% is obviously what they're worried about.
But in terms of investment grade suburb, at face value, an investment grade property like that circa 1970 stuff's great. Just go and renovate it and give it a bit more life. The rental yield's not bad. So let us know.
Remember George had one as well. He had one a 2-bedroom apartment in Hawthorn. Mm-hmm. So the first thing you think, 2-bedroom apartment in Hawthorn, older block. It's actually pretty good, and so why hasn't the growth been there? And that has been because where it's positioned is quite a difficult one to get to, and two, it is an absolute hike to get to any of the transport nodes and to also the lifestyle nodes. So there can be these little dead pockets that you do find in certain locations which are hard to determine, and that's the field research that you have to do once you've done your suburb research.
But here's the thing, we're buying stuff in Preston and Reservoir, which is further away from the city than a similar style property. So
you just said Reservoir there?
Reservoir?
It's Western Australian for it. Reservoir, mate.
Reservoir, mate. Yeah, that Reservoir, mate.
I'm a northern suburb, but what's Reservoir, mate?
It's like when you go to when you come from out of town and you go Pran. Everyone goes, mate, it's Pran. It's Pran, mate.
Well, Coogee, and what do you say?
Coogee.
Coogee.
Yeah,
it's strange, isn't it?
Derby instead of Derby.
Yeah, correct.
We just say it the way it spells. Not like you Victorians. All right, last one here.
All right, what do we got?
From Christian. One, would love to listen to an episode dedicated to exit strategies in retirement. So
here it is.
There it is.
You gave us the motivation, the inspiration.
Types of strategies, how to exit, how much income to expect in retirement, all that sort of stuff. And two, are the days of large portfolios over? Given the current APRA restrictions and banks' extremely conservative assessment rates, many investors with 3 to 4 properties are finding it difficult to borrow more for further purchases. Banks are assessing existing borrowings as P&I loans with rates at 7.5%. Rental income at 80% and negative gearing not taken into account. For an investor with 2 to 3 properties or more, that kills your servicing to borrow more. Yes, it's a first world issue, but we need to build a decent asset base to get the passive income stream down the track. Thoughts? Love your work.
Christian, you are right in the sense that it is more difficult to get the lending, which obviously means that your accelerated portfolio has a longer runway. So for the listeners, what does that mean? Start yesterday. Yesterday's gone. Start today. Because the earlier you start on this journey, the better you are served in terms of being able to buy those properties. So it's important to understand. Now, will APRA hold these positions longer term? They've already said publicly that they are happy to review some of their positions in terms of the macro-prudential, certainly the speed limits in terms of lenders borrowing more. I think you'll find that there will be a lot of change in the lending market with challenger banks and neo banks coming in the next 3 to 5 years. We're already starting to see stories about these new banks coming in. I suspect there will be niche banks coming into play that will be looking at these types of things as well. So I think the landscape for lending will change. I think that there will be more creative ways in which you will be able to lend. So I'm not giving up on the idea that you can't have a more aggressive way of doing it, but certainly the reason why they've put these measures in place is because if everybody does that and if everybody gears themselves aggressively, there can only be one outcome, and that is that there will be people financially penalised or hurt when the marketplace corrects post-cycle. So we're not seeing a bubble, as we've highlighted here, but we're certainly seeing the air coming out of the balloon, and it won't pop. It's just going to basically deflate slowly. So that's been a good story. But if the economy keeps moving at say 3% and we start seeing interest rates go up, then there will be some people who will be hurting. So they're the people that they're hitting. My frustration is that there are some sophisticated money managers and elite money managers out there, and they're being robbed of the opportunity to put their money where their mouth is. But I think there will be business opportunities for companies who see that and say, I think I would be happy to lend to someone like that because they're a great and elite money manager. And I think that, I take the risk in that. So the big banks may not take the risk, but certainly small neo banks may take some of that risk. You don't have to pay for it. Maybe it's going to be slightly higher interest rates, but ultimately this market will come out of its current hiatus in regards to lending appetite.
Yeah, I agree. A couple of things. For a serious investor, Ben, this is actually a gift to them, because if it continued to go where it was going to go, there would have been a massive correction. So it's actually a gift. For the speculators, it's not a gift. It's a hindrance, right? So if you're a long-term investor, you're playing for the long game, it's absolutely a gift. This too shall pass. If you think about in 2000, I've said this before. I was involved where we were always, every single purchase that we made was positive cash flow, and then we were doing the sums after the GST came in, and the tax rates would move, and all of a sudden people had to pay $10 a week, Ben. $10 a week. Now, if you think about that, it's now laughable. Everyone would line up in droves to pay $10 a week, but back then, so we thought it was the end of property investment, thought it was never going to survive that. And I think Ed Chan says it best when he says, for as long as people shuffle in their seat, always to get more comfortable and find a better position, so too will the market. But for me, think about it in terms of a season. Sure, it's winter. Winter is here, but it doesn't mean summer's not coming again. So this will pass.
And at the moment, it's a mild winter. It will become a sort of a blizzard winter if sentiment was to and panic came into the market, and that's why these prudential regulations were put in there. It's just because it is blanket, and we can't work a niche of 5 or 10% of the market who can comfortably move forward. That's the frustrating part. But again, where there's demand, businesses will see opportunity, and I suspect you'll see, if there is a really strong will to find this money to keep moving forward, because you're aggressive and you know what you're doing, you can find the money if you hunt around.
There we go. So thank you, Christian. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Lou. Wonderful, wonderful questions. And on our theme of
exit strategies.
Christian, you wanted to know types of strategies. We covered that. How to exit. We covered that. And how much income to expect in retirement. So
I'll round that. So when we are sitting down and we're looking at people's situations, because obviously that's what we do, we talk about these types of things. We talk about, do you want to leave a legacy? Are you going to, in your own planning, is there an inheritance coming in? That's a difficult question, because obviously it's like, well, I don't really want to talk about my folks or whatever. So, but the reality is you may be receiving a lump sum. I mean, we are now getting an older country, 200 years plus. So we're going to see some of that inheritance. There's been a lot of wealth that's been created over the last 50 or so years. So we look at those things as a way to pay down debt. We also say to ourselves, well, if you want to teach your kids how to fish, then that's great, but you're going to take everything that you've harvested and live off that, and that's terrific as well. So there's all these different types of things that we would say, and in most cases there is the legacy or a combination of we'll leave them a couple, but potentially the rest is for us, because that's what we've worked hard to do. And I'm a big believer, and I'll talk more about this probably next year, is that you're working for 40 years, right? And it's what you do with that 40 years that you're working. So you're going to work 40 years for your retirement. The great news here is, though, hey, you're going to be retired for 30 years. Whereas the people who are working for 40 years in the 20s were dying 2 or 3 years after they basically quit work or retired. So we should be incredibly grateful for the knowledge that has developed in terms of increasing our livelihood and our health. So that's the point. So whenever you want to, so if you're going to work for 5 or 10 years to play and party hard and but you're working 40 for the future. So just make sure if you understand that, you're going to be well served.
You didn't throw a webinar in there, obviously.
I didn't throw a webinar yet, but I'll sort of step out that theory.
It'll happen. So there you go, folks. So hopefully that's helped you. My life hack today, Ben, is do you know what you're buying Jane for Christmas?
A renovation of a house.
Okay.
I think that's enough.
All right. So
for all of us.
Let's just assume you're going to buy her a present that she can open on the day.
Yep.
Instead of the keys to the front door.
I don't know how I put the wrapper around the pool.
So let's just say I'm trying to help you out here.
Sorry.
So this is a life hack for you. So work with me. Right. So have you decided on the present that you're going to buy her for Christmas?
Yeah.
Because my life hack is to help you.
All right. So I've got to think about that right now.
Oh well, your phone. No. What'd really help me is if you said no, I haven't decided.
Oh, sorry. No.
Okay.
I'll think about that 5 minutes before.
Okay, so that's helpful. Thank you, because that exchange works
I'm
now.
glad we prepped that.
So I've got an idea for you, all right? Now, I have bought Andrew. Andrew's born on the 22nd of December.
Right. Oh,
so,
okay. That's it.
That's annoying, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit annoying.
Because every year I get everyone's busy, everyone's got other things on their mind. So, she doesn't listen to the podcast, so I can get away with this. So, for those of you who know Andrea.
We care, Andrea.
Yeah.
We care.
So this year, I have absolutely smoked it, right?
Yeah.
I can't tell you what I bought, but I got her something she really wants.
She doesn't listen to podcasts.
And this is it'll get back. So we're recording in November 20. So I'm well planned. And I bought it 2 weeks ago. I bought it when we were in Sydney, when we were doing the Sydney Buyers Expo. So actually, if that gets back to Andrea, I'd appreciate that. No, she knows. So what I did to her is because I'm really poor at this normally. I've gone home and I've gone, hey, I bought you your birthday present, and I'm so excited that I want to tell you now. And do you want to know? And she's got, and then I've gone, no, I'll keep it right. But do you want to guess what it is? Right. So she guessed 2 or 3 things that weren't it, right?
Yeah.
But all of a sudden it gave me an idea. Those 2 or 3 things. She's fed back to me some...
Correct. Things she wants.
So if you can't think of anything that you want to buy your partner or your spouse, just tell them you bought that for them.
God.
Ask them to guess. Stay vague on the answer, and they will give you their top 3. Like, Jane, I've bought you a Christmas present. You're really going to love it. But guess what it is? And she'll go, those earrings I've always wanted.
Oh,
okay, that's a good one. Might be that.
Yeah. No, that's not that one. But tell me a little bit more about those.
Boom. Top 3. So then you go to the shops next day, buy it, and you look like a genius, Ben. So I'm doing that for you, and I'm also doing it for the listeners. So if you can't think of what to get someone for Christmas, tell them you've already got them a gift.
Little.
And guess what it is?
Just a little white lie.
Guess what it is? And boom! Multiple ideas of things that person wants. So that's my life hack today.
That's a ripper.
You like that one?
I like that one.
Oh, it's coming into the Christmas season.
Oh, I think it's a good one.
You're going to use that, aren't you?
Yeah. I do that. My mum's 70th birthday's coming up.
Yeah.
Next Monday, actually. So happy birthday, Mum.
Happy birthday, Mum.
Happy birthday, Mum. 70.
Yeah.
So she tells me every year, what do you want, Mum? They go on there. We're done, beautiful.
Nice.
Done. So I've just got to order it, get it up there for Christmas.
Nice.
Keep it cool. She wants one of those, the misting fans, but the big proper ones, the commercial ones. So because it gets hot at Yarrawonga.
Yeah.
So she wants to sit out on the deck, look over the.
She's put in a request, and
so she's put in the request.
Serves you well.
So the only thing, the biggest challenge I want is it going to have a blue, container that holds the water, or a black one? That's tough.
How are you going to resolve that?
I don't know. Anyway.
Did you know?
Did you know? So now on a more somber note, Bryce, bit more somber here in terms of what's going on. Men's health. I want to talk about some hairy facts, which I've obviously got from the Movember website.
And segued, hairy.
Yeah, and I said segued. So men's health. So in terms of 1 in 2 Australians will be diagnosed with cancer by the age of 85. 50%. Okay. And in terms of, on average, Australian men die around 4 years younger than women at the moment. Right. So now, here's the really somber one. This one's not a great stat. Suicide. Okay. Men between the ages of 15 and 44 years. Suicide is the leading cause of death between 15 and 44. Leading cause. That's terrible. 6 men every day kill themselves.
It's terrible.
That's
not good at all.
That is horrible. Hence the motivation for what we're doing. Prostate cancer, number 1. So it's the number 1 cancer for men in Australia, prostate cancer. Good news story for prostate cancer is it is a slow cancer. My father had it and got it early enough. So another reason why we're doing what we're doing. So, but you got to get it checked out. If you don't get it checked, then even though it might be slow, it might have got to a stage. So 3,400 men with prostate cancer will die in Australia this year. Not good enough. Okay, testicular cancer. So basically is the second most common cancer behind skin cancers in young men between 18 and 39 years. Okay, 37 years old is the average age for men diagnosed with testicular cancer, and we've seen a couple of AFL footballers recently as well. So it's good that it's getting out there. So get it checked out. Do a once a year health check with your doctor. Go and get it checked out. Very sombering facts.
Well, it'll be interesting to talk to our guest next week to see, because some of those tests are, guys just not wanting to go and do that.
It's awkward.
There's got to be some developments in that to make guys feel comfortable and feel like it's a safe space. So let's use that as a leading chat. But mate, I didn't know that stuff. That's not good. So. Clearly,
so we're going for 10. We're going for 10 to get Ibis on. But they're the real reasons we're going for 10.
Well, let's give some housekeeping here, Ben. If you donate $25 or more, just go to our Facebook page. The page already exists.
Yep.
All you have to do is let us know. Take a screenshot. Just let us know. We'll reach out to you. We'll send you the book. But we want to rally the troops because we want Ibis to get involved. So if we hit 7.5, she'll do the intro. If we hit $10,000 for charity,
$1,000,
she will be involved in the whole episode. So
I'd love to know her life hack. That would be.
I do want to know Ibis's life hack. Yeah,
because she's very clever.
What about Mindset Minute? Remember we were in America? I don't read. Yep. So so 10,000 is what we're aiming for, folks. Help us out, please. Help us out, please. So I've just put this under my nose, Ben.
Yeah, it's a good one.
This is from Mike Toner. Hey guys, I just left a review on your Facebook page. Just wanted to say a huge thank you for the wealth of knowledge I've gained over the last 6 months listening to your podcast. I think we've listened to everyone now. I started buying property 15 years ago and you've highlighted to me so many things that I've massively screwed up on. But as Conor McGregor says, in brackets, I'm Irish by the way, you either win or learn. I feel now with the knowledge attained from your podcast and surrounding myself by the right people, I will do a lot more winning than learning. And amazing work on the Movember as well. I do a lot of fundraising for the Fred Hollows Foundation, very much on the same page as Bryce with personal development, in brackets, massive Tim Ferriss, Tony Robbins fan, etc. One thing I continually see is people who I regard as successful constantly seem to give back. So great to see you guys leading by example here, albeit at the expense of looking like Magnum PI for the month. I only just look like I've got a moustache, so it's been a rough 22 days.
So, but you wear light coloured shirts, so your moustache gets lost in it. You go the dark colour, and
we'll do a photo today, obviously, so people can actually see my moustache now. So it's good. Great work, team, and thanks again for the continual education, leadership, and all things not only property but life related. Very much appreciate it.
So
thank you for the feedback.
$200.
Okay.
$200 too. $200 big smackers.
So you don't have to do 25.
No.
You can do more than that. And Colin will be listening to this over in Perth. So he's about to kick off another $100 because of Stiggy. So
thanks, Mike. And Fred Hollow's fantastic. Don't start me on what an amazing Australian that bloke was. I mean, giving eyesight to people all around the world, just nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've got a little bit of spare cash, pop something that way too.
Yeah.
Just insane. Now, can I thank the audience for something that they've done?
Yeah.
It's over 500 five-star reviews.
Whoa.
It's nuts.
It's
fantastic. I mean, it's very, very cool that people get, who are just kind enough. It's a lot easier on the new iPhone app now. You just can hit 5 and it calculates it and done. You don't have to write a review and submit it or anything like that. But yeah, that's insane.
We love getting it. We read them all. We appreciate the feedback. It keeps us going. But most of all, if you're getting any benefit from the podcast, Ben, tell a friend. Please just get them to go back to those foundational episodes where we're thinking that we might update the 4 pillars of mastery, Ben.
Oh, okay.
For our summer series. So
because
that was way back in the boondocks. So we might do an updated one as well.
As of today, 521.
Woof.
5-star reviews.
We appreciate that.
We do.
That helps us stay in the algorithm, which nobody knows how iTunes algorithm works, but it's to do with downloads and it's to do with reviews. So
more people can find it.
Certainly
take away the knowledge.
That absolutely. There we go, folks. There's another Q&A day done and dusted. Ivers has stood up, so that means Ben, hurry up and sign off. That's what it means. Hands are in the pocket. Cheers to go and produce the show.
3 o'clock today.
So, mate, until next week.
Knowledge is empowering, Bryce, but only if you act on it.
Well said. See you next week, folks.